Okay. Good morning, everyone. Just when we're about to go, for some reason, the sound all disappeared. So I hope people can find me and see me. I saw the numbers drop down to the 20s or something, but it looks like we're back up to 50 or 60 people. Okay. Perfect now. Good. Good to hear that. Well, this is an Uposita day, and it is also the Visakha Puja, or in Thailand they say Wan Visakha Puja. So this is one of the three chief holidays, or Buddhist holy days, um, and it's the commemoration of the Buddha's birth, his attainment of enlightenment, and his passing away. So Theravada Buddhism is very efficient, I think, in terms of its holidays, especially with all three of those being commemorated on the same day. So, and it is also an Uposita day. So, besides being a festival day or holy day, it's the regular sort of Buddhist Sabbath, as we might say, or a day where lay people are gathering in the monasteries for a day and a night of precepts and practice and listening to teachings. So, and day that the monks gather and recite their Patimokkha precepts and review their conduct in the training of the Buddha. So, we didn't really even consider that our retreat would be overlapping with Visakha Puja. It just happened to be the time of year that we had selected for the retreat before this whole notion of the pandemic came upon us, and feels like good fortune to be right in the middle of a retreat, practicing and listening to teachings on the four Satipatthana. So, it's a good way to spend the day. And in some sense, something very special is going on besides the Visakha Puja, and that's hundreds of people are taking the time to devote their day to practice and study. So, last night, Ajahn gave a talk on, he moved into the realm of Vedanā, or the second of the four foundations of mindfulness. And this is one of my favorite aspects of the Satipatthana, largely because it's simple and direct, and I think we need simple and direct. There is an overwhelming wealth of teachings, tools, models, stories, reflections, and encouragement in the Pali Canon. It really is just this amazing treasure from the time the Buddha carried forward, but it can be overwhelming to people, as evidenced in some of the questions that we've had. But it's something that comes up all the time. As people start to enter into the sutta treasury, they become a little confused about where to turn to next, how it all integrates and relates. And simplicity is really important, not to be overwhelmed by those teachings, not feeling like you need to practice every little aspect and understand every little aspect. And this particular section of the Satipatthana I love for its brevity and simplicity, and also it's always struck me as a eminently practical teaching. One of the first places, I should say, the first place and the first monastery that I spent time at in Thailand was Wat Suan Mokkha Balaram, founded by Ajahn Buddhadasa Bhikkhu. And I think it was within mere weeks of arriving there, I got a copy of his book on dependent origination, and he spends some time in that book, introducing the whole concept of dependent origination, but also he gives a special emphasis on the understanding of how Vedanā, which I call feeling affect. It can be a bit confusing for people that aren't familiar with the teachings to hear it just referred to as feeling, because the way we use that word refers to a lot of things that are actually sankharas in the Buddhist classification system. So by feeling, we don't mean emotion. By feeling, we mean this dimension of positivity or negativity that arises dependent on any sense contact we have. So we talk about pleasant, neutral, and painful sights. So what's a painful sight? Something that's ugly, or something that appears ugly to us, or even appears frightful or horrifying, like there's a negative feeling affect that arises sort of as we apprehend some object of the senses. And much of life is filled with things that are middling or somewhere in the middle, not really so easily noticed or classified as unpleasant or pleasant. And then, of course, there's the pleasant. And a pleasant sight is something that we behold as beautiful, something that strikes us as pleasant and pleasing, like a sunset. Or I sort of grew up practicing photography, and that sensitized me to the quality of light. And sometimes here in the Hermitage, this happened just the other day, there was a rain, and then there was a bit of sun, and then as we moved into late afternoon, early evening, I was downstairs in the Hermitage house, and I just kind of looked out in the direction of the garden and the forest, and there was just this beautiful quality of light. It wasn't like a stunning sunset or something like this, but it was hard to describe what exactly was going on. I think there were some clouds, and the sun was hitting it and creating this wonderful, warm, diffuse light that changed the whole way that I was experiencing and viewing the plants and the trees. They had this wonderful quality about them, and even the air seemed to be filled with this light. And so that's a pleasant sight. Sometimes that happens, and I point it out to the other monks, and they say, "What are you talking about, Ajahn?" They don't see it, because their conditioning, their volition, their attention is otherwise directed, and they're working with different conditions. So, there is an element of karma, an element of conditioning, an element of volition, what it is that we look for. Like my whole life, I've been somewhat sensitive to this, and so I have an eye out for a beautiful quality of light. Right now, the image on my screen does not look beautiful. Something's off about the color. But there's nothing worse than watching a monk fiddle with his computer. So I'll just have to leave it at that. Anyways, this practice of Vedanā, I really wish Ajahn would go into it more deeply, because although it's a simple practice, there's some beautiful ways that this can be applied. But I suspect, in the interest of time, he's going to be moving onwards into the mindfulness of mind, of mental states, and mindfulness of Dhamma categories, because there's a lot more there to be explored and pointed out, and for him to explain his approach to understanding and putting those into practice. Many teachers have made much out of this contemplation of the practice of mindfulness of Vedanā, or feeling affect, the term I use. But quite simply, you can construct a practice around it where you're paying attention to anything in a formal sort of way as we meditate. The breath can strike one as pleasant, neutral, or painful. Generally, it's very neutral, but sometimes it has this pleasant feeling effect. And what's very worth investigating in our meditation is to evoke this kind of frame of the spectrum of something striking us as pleasant, neutral, or painful. And it's especially interesting, and it takes real discernment and a kind of silent, lucid, clear mind sometimes to see what's going on with neutral sensations. So the breath can be a very interesting way to explore how this Vedanā works in the mind, and it calls the mind forth into a deeper sort of state of serenity and lucidity to be able to discern how it is that feeling effect is arising and passing away. And especially with neutral feelings, it can be easy to slip into a sense of doubt because it's very, sometimes our assessment of these things is colored by what we expect or what came before it, as Ajahn kind of referenced last night. And if you've been sick and unable to breathe, or if the breath has been very tight or labored, or sometimes it feels very hot, and then all of a sudden it feels more fresh and cool, or open, or free-flowing, or easeful, and then it strikes one as pleasant. So it's interesting. This is a very interesting way to sort of develop mindfulness and concentration, but also it's a very interesting exploration into liking and disliking. And it takes us into an investigation of the desire structures and how it is that we are overly invested in this dimension of consciousness, this feeling affect. Ajahn evoked this image of a monkey, and most of the time people think of the monkey mind as just this scattered, restless, excessively discursive, unable to focus, conscious pattern that is so prevalent, maybe even more so today with the complexity of people's lives and how it is that they spend their days. But when Ajahn was talking about this in his talk last night, he's talking about the monkey sort of leaping from tree to tree for the reason of seeking food. And, it mirrors the typical relationship that we have in the sense realm. We're constantly scanning the horizon. We're constantly exploring and looking for pleasant sensations. We take refuge in. We're invested in. It's a huge part of our strategy for happiness and well-being, is trying to find, discover, assess, hold on to, control access to things that arouse pleasant sensation. The sights we like, the ideas we like, the environments that feel pleasing and comfortable to us, the sounds that arouse those things. And of course, trying to manipulate how much time we we have to be associated with the unpleasant end of the spectrum there. Another way I kind of think of it is we're kind of like gamblers, an addicted gambler. The monkey has to feed. He needs this. He needs this nutriment. He needs this engagement, and just like think about that image. Like it's kind of a hell. It's kind of a sentence, or it's a kind of a hell realm to have to constantly browse and jump from tree to tree. You leap in this tree, you're looking around for any little scraps of fruit that are left. Oh, this one's not quite ripe, but I'll try it anyways. This tree's been mostly picked over again and again and again. Occasionally you find a tree that hasn't been picked over, the fruit's just right, jackpot. And there's this random reinforcement. We're intoxicated with sense of gain and the pleasantness of finding that not just that we like, but what we need. If this is our only strategy for well-being and happiness, which for most people it is. I mean, this is samsara. This is the Mara's realm. This is the sense realm, and it's the chief strategy for most beings. And just hunting around for pleasant sensations and trying to minimize their exposure to and the liability from negative sensations. And whether you're a monk or a layperson, the Buddha says one should understand the pleasure, the gratification, and the danger in sense objects. And this particular practice of studying Vedanā really is an in-depth exploration of just how deeply addicted and how deeply invested we are in finding our well-being in pleasant sense contact. So, it's something I highly encourage everybody to make a commitment to spending some time developing in their practice. One simple way to explore it is just to couple it with the breath. And from beginning to end, you can be chiefly using the breath to anchor itself in the present mind, so there's not a lot of discursiveness, but you have this theme in mind for your meditation. You're sensitized to, you're interested in, you're wanting to sort of explore how it is that these sensations arise and cease. And then also like how that affects you. What's your relationship to it? And I have to stress, this is all six senses. So, it includes mind, it includes ideas. So, consciousness, our thought is part of it. There are beautiful perceptions. There are painful perceptions. The perception that your practice isn't going the way you would hope for it or expect it is a painful thought. Or it's exposed as a painful emotion or painful feeling. Frustration is a painful feeling. So, it sights, it sounds, it smells, it's touches, like you feel pain in meditation. That's dukkha Vedanā. Dukkha is painful feeling affect. The body feels light and relaxed and open and is full of ease. Then the touch consciousness that is arising, dependent on the bodily sensations at that moment, are pleasant, positive, delightful. So you can really do this in so many ways. If you want to do it in a formal, focused way, you can use the breath. It's a very good thing. It helps anchor one in the present moment. Going through the body is a very good way to sort of explore this as well. You can focus on a particular part or area of the body, or have some very simple, well-rehearsed, systematic way of going through the body as other teachers teach. That can be a very good experience or example. And if you do this enough, and you really take this up as a frame of reference or a foundation for your mindfulness, it can accomplish the goal of mindfulness, of overcoming the hindrances and helping one develop the factors of awakening. It creates the kind of support for moving into the cultivation and the fruition of Sama Samadhi. But also, there's a lot that can be mined in terms of understanding the Four Noble Truths and understanding the three characteristics of anicca, dukkha, and anatta by this kind of in-depth, lucid, clear exploration of Vedanā, feeling affect. So, and if one practices this regularly and deeply, it will start to permeate into your very your very kind of life. Your everyday movements and activities will start to be understood in this way. You'll see yourself when somebody sort of arouses an ugly idea or a painful word is uttered. You'll see yourself sometimes, rather than sort of fight back or be sunk into the depths of some emotion, sort of having the opportunity to sort of understand this is just painful, a painful word or a painful idea that's being shared with me. And an enormous level of freedom will open up eventually when you just realize that the best course of action is to divest. We find other ways to sort of build our happiness and well-being through the cultivation of the practice, and eventually we're able to divest in this realm sort of being so ever important. Pain still remains pain, and it's clear that even the Buddha experienced painful sensations after his awakening and through his life, but he doesn't suffer over it. And he has other more superior forms of pleasure that are accessible to him. So that's a reflection for everyone today on this one Vaisakha Puja. If you haven't yet had the chance to listen to Ajahn fifth Dhamma talk in the meditation series, that's something that'd be there for you today to turn to. And we have a full day of practice ahead of us. Tea this afternoon again, and evening puja, and then the sixth Dhamma talk will be tonight at 8:15. So good to see so many people here, and apologize for the difficulties getting the stream going, but I hope it wasn't too painful. It's so good to see the good cheer and so many friends kind of checking in every morning and giving each other good encouragement and support. So I wish you all a good day, and we'll see you tomorrow morning, if not sooner, on some of the streams and activities we have for the retreat today. So be well.